Hi, everybody. Today, I want to talk about worthiness. I'm reminded of that joke that was going around a few years ago where you would tease your friends by saying, "I am not worthy." And that's kind of interesting because it's kind of making fun of the way that we think of worthiness in our culture. We think of it as something that could be ranked, like some person is more worthy than another person. And often that's based on the value that the person has in the culture or what they produce or bring to other people or to the market. So a lot of our worthiness is actually based on our capitalist culture. Bosses are more worthy than employees, and entrepreneurs are more worthy than employees or people who work in nonprofit organizations. But the basis of it is that there's huge pressure and huge temptation to base your worthiness on your value, how valuable you are from other person's point of view or from the culture's point of view. And I definitely suffered from that belief. When I was married, I thought that my worthiness depended on how good of a wife and mother I was. And I think this is a problem or a trap that a lot of women can fall into, because we are taught that our value is about those things, about our looks, about, our desirability as a partner, and how good of a mother we are, or even that we can be mothers. And that makes life stressful for women because that's a constantly moving target. There's no end to that. That's why we can feel like we're running on a treadmill, and we can get very stressed out and think that if I just tick up all these boxes on my to-do list, and if I'm super productive, then I'm worthy. But the problem is that being seen as worthy by other people is so hit and miss. It just so much depends on nothing reliable, like it could just depend on a person's mood. You could work very hard and no one will appreciate it or attribute it to your worthiness. And something that women do, something that I did when I was married, is I would just keep trying harder and putting more pressure on myself. And that made me very unhappy. So the worthiness based on what you're producing, how you're conforming, the value that you add to other people. It's not predictable or stable. It's not something you can control. Now, there is an upside to that kind of worthiness. If you've worked very hard for something in your life, or I don't want to say hard because I don't think you should work hard, but if you've been very dedicated and committed to something and you put in the time, you can get a sense of worthiness from that. And it can be really powerful, because if people are not appreciating you to the level that you feel worthy, you'll know it. And you'll know that this isn't really your place, or that these people need to come up or you're gonna step out. But what I really want to talk to you about is another kind of worthiness, and this is intrinsic worthiness. And this is something that I've been cultivating over the years since my divorce. Before I go into that, I do want to say something about how the divorce itself really plummeted me to like the lowest low of worthiness I'd ever experienced. I just I felt so unworthy because I was losing so much so fast. My partner, my home, my nuclear family, the stress it put on the relationship with my kids. It really brought me to the bottom of worthiness. And I didn't really know if I could get out of it. It was very scary. There was part of me was I'm done. And the other part of me is this can't be, I can't let this be the end. So there was a real push-pull going there. So if you have recently gotten out of a relationship, or you've gotten out of a very painful ending to a relationship, you really understand how your worthiness can suffer. So after my divorce, I still tried to get my worthiness from outside of myself in my job. And that had the same disastrous results of feeling stressed out and just trying harder and harder and not getting anywhere. But luckily, after I started developing my emotional intelligence, I started to develop intrinsic worthiness. And the one thing I want to say about intrinsic worthiness is you're born with it. It's your birthright. You come to this planet with it. However you think about that, whether it's grace or the cosmos or whatever. So the benefit of intrinsic worthiness is it's not really based on what you do. It's just who you are. You are worthy just because you're here. You don't have to do anything for it. One way I like to think about this is to think about trees and birds and bugs. I never look at a tree and think, is that tree worthy? Is that tree doing enough photosynthesis? Is it processing enough carbon? Is it providing enough shade? That bird, like, is it really like eating enough insects? We never say stuff like that because trees are inherently worthy. Birds and bugs are inherently worthy. Just because they're here, they do things, but they don't do it to earn their right to be here or to earn their sense of worthiness. They are just worthy, and they don't know anything else. So the benefits of intrinsic worthiness are that it's not based on other people's opinions, what you do or don't do for people. It's not based on any of that. So I want to talk about how does it feel, because as I mentioned before, at the end of my divorce, I felt like worthless. I felt like nothing. And if you feel like that, or if you felt like that, you're not alone. But also, I think it's pretty common. Like, it makes sense to feel that way if you've been taught that your worthiness is based on the approval of other people, based on what you do, based on how good you look, how sexy you are, what a good wife or mother you are. So what does it feel like? How does it feel? What does internal worthiness feel like? I want to say it feels like happiness, but happiness is such a broad category. Sociologists and psychologists identify 5 basic emotions, and that is fear, anger, sadness, happiness, and disgust. And I think actually there's only 4, because I think of disgust as a type of anger. So I could tell you that intrinsic worthiness feels like happiness, but it's kind of vague. So the way that I like to describe it is, it's like feeling at home. Whether you're at home or not, it's that feeling of belonging. So let's talk about what feeling at home feels like. It feels comfortable. It feels like you belong. You feel relaxed, and you don't have anything to prove, and you don't have anything to earn. You just feel at home. And you feel that way wherever you go. You could be in the middle of a stressful project and feel at home. You could be in the middle of a work situation where everyone is evaluating you on what you do, or how obedient you are, or how little you rock the boat, or how much you hustle. But you can still feel intrinsic worthiness. You can still feel at home. And the reason this kind of worthiness is worth cultivating and having a strong relationship with is because it makes you immune to the external worthiness. It makes you feel good about yourself just as you are, regardless of the reviews, positive or negative, from other people. So I want to give you 3 ways that you can cultivate this internal worthiness. And the first one is I want you to notice, really notice and be aware of when you have this feeling of being at home. So on Saturday morning, I woke up and I was lying in bed. And I know you've all had this experience before where the sheets feel so soft and the pillows are so cushy and you're so relaxed and you didn't wake up with the alarm clock. You just woke up when you were ready, when you were rested. And you're just laying in bed and it feels so amazing. And you just want to savor it. And you feel at home. There's nothing that you have to jump out of bed to do. You don't have to earn anything. You're just there and you feel at home. So I want you to take a mental picture of a time like that. It could be like when you come home on after work and you sit down and you have a cup of tea. You have that feeling of belonging, a feeling of being at home. And then the second thing that you can do to cultivate this internal worthiness is to be in nature. So when you go into a forest or go to the edge of to the beach where the water meets the land, you're taken out of all of our cultural cues. You know, you don't see like advertising or cars or hear all the sounds. And when you get in a situation like that, you start to realize that there's something bigger than you going on here. And it feels awesome. Like that thing that's bigger than you, it feels so nice. It feels like a relief. And the other thing about this feeling of something bigger than you, that's outside of the culture that we've all kind of agreed to and perpetuate, that's pretty much made up, is that you're a part of this bigger thing. There's no rank in it. Like you're not, the bigger thing isn't higher or better than you. And you are not higher or better than this bigger thing. It's like you feel like you're a part of it. Just like the tree is a part of it, the birds, the grass. You're a part of this bigger, glorious, amazing, benevolent, powerful thing. So I want you to look up at the stars and go to the mountain, go to the ocean, and get in touch with that feeling, because that is innate worthiness. That's what it feels like. It feels inviting and powerful and safe, and you feel like you belong and you're at home. And then the third thing that you can do to cultivate this inner worthiness is to bring those pictures and experiences to highly charged environments where your worthiness seems to be based on things outside of you. like a stressful work situation, or a relationship with someone where they just never really acknowledge your value. I wouldn't hang around with those people, but sometimes it can't be avoided. So I want you to bring that sense of feeling at home and belonging into those situations. Like when you notice that you're starting to get on that hamster wheel of earning worthiness by producing something or by pleasing someone. Once you like start to get on it and you're starting to spin, you can stop and you can recall those pictures to remind yourself of what internal worthiness feels like. And the more you do that, the more that internal worthiness will become more powerful and more second nature than external worthiness. So we have to ask ourselves, if 1,000 women really cultivated their internal worthiness, and it's such a kick-ass thing to do, really. It's like, it's revolutionary. You know, like we all think, let's burn the place down, let's riot, let's, you know, have protests. But this is so powerful. If you cultivate a sense of inner worthiness, intrinsic worthiness, that you belong no matter where you are, no matter who approves of you or disapproves of you, it's a very powerful act. And if just 1,000 women did that, it would change the world. And what would that world change to? It would be a world where women weren't controlled. It would be a world where women were happier and more centered and more confident. And there would be way less drama. You know, depending on outward worthiness, creates a lot of drama. And unfortunately, our nervous systems are becoming attuned to that heightened drama. But we can turn that around. It's not written in stone by any means. So I am all about creating a culture, that works for everybody, that is sustainable, that works for the greater good rather than destructive, selfish ends. So I want to thank you so much for listening to this video. And if you're the kind of person who's very serious about having an unshakable inner worthiness, and that is something you would really like to dial into your life, you can contact me at theemotionalintelligenceschool.com, or you can private message me on Facebook through the Emotional Intelligence School. And we could sit down and look at what you want in your life. What is your happily ever after? What really makes you happy? And we can put together a plan of how to create that in your life and how to become that person who has that kind of life that you want. I wish all the women in the world unshakable worthiness. You deserve it. not because of what you do, although I know you do a hell of a lot, not because of who you please, but just because you belong here. This is your home. So have a really amazing weekend. I wish that for you. It's not an order, it's just a wish. And thank you so much again for liking and sharing and for visiting my website. I really appreciate it. Aloha.